Ready, set, 1, 2, 3.
Welcome
to
MV
Students. Guys, we're so excited that you took some time to join us again for episode 4 of MV Students. And we have a lot of great things planned for you, some good laughs and time in God's Word to grow together as a student community. And continuing our series called
Go the Distance.
Let's do this. Woo! Boom!
Let's go. Yeah. We came a long way. That's what the song say. And I could do all things. I could do all things. Yeah, I could do all things.
All right, everybody, we're gonna play a little game we call True or False. Matt, so you ready for this? So this is how this is gonna work. I'm going to say a statement about myself. You can ask me some questions to determine whether or not you think I'm telling the truth. And at the end of those questions, you have to wager how much whipped cream you're willing to put on the table. If you're right, the whipped cream goes on your plate. If you're wrong, all that whipped cream goes on my plate. That's gonna end up on your face. You ready for this?
Let's do it.
So my first statement about myself, Matt, is my uncle was arrested for assassinating Abraham Lincoln.
What was his name?
His name was Jack. Well, John. His name was John, but he went by the name, we called him Uncle Jack. Not Locke. I don't remember his last name. Oh no, I should have fact checked this before I said it.
I think it is false, and I want to wager 4 seconds worth of whipped cream.
4 seconds worth of whipped cream. Well, the answer is true!
What?
Unbelievable! Yeah, my uncle was arrested for assassinating President Lincoln. He actually was at the Ford Theater. He was part of the production, and we called him Uncle Jack, but he was arrested, and he was detained for quite some time. So yeah, a little piece of American history.
Bummer.
4 seconds, that goes on my plate. You want to count with me?
1, 2, 3, 4. Stop. Dude, you were
A little extra there.
I once pierced my lip.
You pierced your lip.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you pierced your lip, Matt?
I was maybe sophomore? Probably sophomore.
Maybe a
In
sophomore.
high school, yeah.
So I've known you for like, I don't remember you ever piercing your lip. I'm gonna go false. I'm gonna go 6 seconds because you've never
You don't believe me?
You've never pierced your lip.
I actually pierced my lip.
What?
Yes. I was in gym class, we were playing dodgeball. Someone threw a ball near my face and I dropped down a little too fast and I kneed myself in the lip and my tooth pierced my lip.
Like
So
your tooth went through your lip?
I kneed myself in the chin or the lip and my tooth pierced all the way through my lip. There was like a hole right here.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. What?
You want to count?
Yeah, ready? Count with me, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've been arrested for drug dealing.
I think there was a time you told me a story about where drugs were involved. Who were you with?
I was with my friend Jason at the time.
It's a pretty typical name that you can just come up with on the spot. I think it's true.
Think it's true?
I'm going to wager, you know what, 6.
You're gonna go 6? Oh,
6
he's going
seconds.
all in. So the answer is, it's false.
No!
Yes, I know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No! I can do a backflip on my BMX bike.
That's pretty impressive. Okay, well I know you've done like the skate park thing before, and I know that you've gone to other stuff. So I'm willing to say that that's true.
All right.
2 seconds.
That is actually true.
Yes! True! Yeah. It'd be
1, 2.
My next statement is I have been depantsed by a dolphin.
Depantsed by a dolphin.
Yeah, a dolphin played a prank on me. Just pulled my pants right off.
Where was this?
We're at like a nature preserve where there was dolphins.
Really? 6 seconds that it's true.
Whoa, you went right there for it. Yes,
Yep.
It is true, ladies and gentlemen. I was depantsed by a dolphin. And the next thing I know, I had this huge dolphin's eyeball next to my face. I was like, oh! And I was like amazed. And then 2 seconds later, I couldn't see it. And I just felt this thing on my leg. And boom, it pulled my pants.
No.
It pulled them right down to my ankles. 6. I lost count. I was just thinking that's going to be a lot.
I was once a lumberjack.
A lumberjack?
Question?
Can you grow a beard?
Not really.
I can't grow a beard. Let's see what you look like with a beard right now. Didn't look too bad. I think you look pretty good with the beard on.
Too bad I can't grow it.
Did you No. I'm gonna say it's false. I'm gonna go for 6 because go big or go home, people.
I was actually a lumberjack.
No! No, well, first of all, when were you a lumberjack? That's ridiculous. Were you climbing trees?
It was while I was going to Marine Valley College.
Okay.
I worked for Oil and Park, and I was on the tree crew, and we would cut them down and chip them. It was a lot of fun.
4, 5, 6, 6! The winner goes to Matt. The face that gets this is me. So the moment of truth, Matt won fair and square. Wait, you can't just. What's the approach? I need to know.
I'm just gonna pie you in the face. It's that simple.
Is it gonna be like a fast slam? Do I need to like block my nose?
Just
like
stop talking,
slow and painful?
and you'll see.
Oh.
Oh man.
That's awful.
Saved you.
So, thank you guys for watching this edition of True or False. And so why don't you say goodbye to everybody?
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Oh, this is it. We love you guys. All right, let's grab our Bibles. Got them?
Yep.
Okay, so where we last left off, Joseph was thrown into a pit. Today, we want to talk a little bit about the significance of what took place in Joseph's life, because the details around that story are both tragic and filled with hope, because they foreshadow something incredible. All right, so Matt, I'll drive. Matt's going to be our narrator and reader as we go. So for this episode, I wanted to take you guys to a place that's really personal to me. It's also a place that's had a significant impact on my life. And going back to Joseph's story now, there's some significant details that we learn about his life. And I think it's really important that you remember that anytime you read details in the Bible, they're not there by accident. The writers crafted these stories to point to significant things for us to know and take note of. And Joseph's story, as he gets thrown into the pit, is loaded with a ton of them.
Let's take a look at some of those. If you have your Bibles, turn to Genesis 37. Looking at the betrayal of his brothers, it says, when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped off his robe, the robe of many colors that he had. Then they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it.
So when we learn that Joseph loses his clothes, not only is his dignity being taken away, but something else even more valuable to Joseph is being taken away. It's his identity. Do any of you feel like one of your siblings is the favorite in your family? You may know the tension that can cause, and Joseph wasn't just kind of the favorite. I mean, he was the favorite. His dad went to the extra effort of making him an incredibly awesome coat of many colors. Back in those days, this would have been incredibly extravagant, and only Joseph got it. So as Joseph wore this coat, it didn't just represent the fact that Joseph had a nice coat or a fashion sense. It represented the fact that he was the favored son. And so when these things were taken off of Joseph, Joseph was stripped of his dignity. He was left naked and ashamed in a pit. And the very thing that identified him, the love of his father, was stripped away from him.
Yeah, Mike, let's keep going into some of these details in the story. Read with me in verse 26. It says, when Judah said to his brothers, what do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him. So it wasn't just enough for his brothers to get rid of him. They would rather sell him for 20 pieces of silver. So he wasn't just abandoned, but he was used, utterly used. And some of you might know what it feels like to be used like that.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can relate to in Joseph's story. The pain, the anguish that he feels, the betrayal that he went through. But more than what he went through is what Joseph points to. Because the details in Joseph's story are meant to point us to a bigger hope and a bigger story that takes place in Jesus.
Yeah, Mike, there are so many things where Joseph foreshadows what Jesus does for us. Let's take a look in John chapter 19, verse 23. It says, when the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, a part for each soldier. Yeah, just like Joseph was stripped of his garments, Jesus was also stripped of his garments and his dignity. And just like Joseph was betrayed, here Jesus is betrayed also. In Matthew 26, it says, Then one of the 12, the man called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" So they weighed out 30 pieces of silver for him. And from that time he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him. And just like Joseph was mocked by his brothers as he was walking over to them, here Jesus is mocked also in Matthew 27, verse 39. Those who passed by were yelling insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "The one who would demolish the sanctuary and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross."
I mean, Joseph is stuck and utterly alone, and Jesus also was utterly alone on that cross as people mocked him for who he claimed to be. So these comparisons matter because what Joseph did was ultimately going to be fulfilled in Jesus. Again, it's easy to think that just because we're following Jesus, life is going to be easy. But the reality is that sometimes we're called into tough places, and sometimes following God and obeying God leads to hard times. But here's the amazing reality and amazing truth is that Jesus is never going to call you to do something that he wasn't willing to do first himself.
Yeah, Mike, that's so good. And that's what's so important to me is to know that where Jesus has already gone, I can go also. In my own life, I'm the youngest of 6. And when I face something that I know my older siblings have already gone through, I can go through it with more courage.
And there's a lot of things in life that are unknown and uncertain, but we can be rest assured knowing that wherever we're facing, we're not facing it alone. And whatever we're facing, we're not facing something that Jesus himself hasn't already faced for you and me. So where I am right now represents one of the most painful times that my wife and I have ever had to go through and endure in our lives. We lost our son Joshua Jacob, and he's resting here. It was a time in our lives when we really didn't know when we were going to find hope. It was a time in our lives when we didn't know when we were going to feel okay to be happy again. It was a time in our lives when we really weren't sure where God was. And I think one of the ultimate fears that I face sometimes in life is what happens when all this is done. What happens when our lives reach their end? And one of the amazing things that we get to find hope in during Holy Week and during Good Friday is to remember that Jesus suffered and died for you and I so that we don't have to. Jesus took death head on by dying for you and for me. And so even when obedience in God, even when faith in God leads to hard places like death, we can know that Jesus has gone ahead of us for us, and we come out on the other side okay. The Bible refers to Jesus like a first fruits, like the resurrection was like just the beginning of more things to come, that what he did was going to be the same thing he would do for you and for me. And later on, we find in Hebrews, the writer says that let us throw off the sin that easily entangles us and let's fix our eyes on Jesus, who scorned the cross and endured the shame. And so even when faith leads you to hard places, and even when faith leads you to the place when you don't know if you're going to be okay again, we can know that because Jesus went through it first, that we can go through it too and be all right. These aren't easy things to sit with. They're hard, they're difficult, and they're painful. But this is the place I think that faith becomes real and alive. And as you and I prepare our hearts for Easter, let's remember that the grave doesn't get the final word. The pit doesn't get the final word. Your difficulties don't get the final say, because Jesus endured it and he came out the other side victorious. And because he's victorious and because we put our trust in him, we have that same victory. So this week, let's not walk in despair. Let's go through our struggles in real ways, remembering that on the other side, we have victory because Jesus was victorious for us. We love you guys.